Welcome back to This Day in Irish History. I'm your host, Raymond Welsh. Before we dive into today's story, if you'd like to explore other significant events that happened on this day in Irish history, visit thisdayirishhistory.com. The link is in the episode description. Now, let's journey back to April 2nd, 1999, when Joseph Delaney was sentenced to life in prison for murder, marking the first time in Irish legal history that someone was convicted specifically as a gangland killer. This case not only shocked the nation, but also symbolized a turning point in how Ireland confronted the rising tide of organised crime. In the late 1990s, Ireland was grappling with the darker side of its economic transformation. The Celtic Tiger was roaring, bringing unprecedented prosperity, but along with it came a surge in drug trafficking, turf wars, and the entrenchment of criminal networks, especially in Dublin and other urban centres. The traditional image of Irish criminality, once limited to local disputes or small-time theft, gave way to something more sinister and systematic. Organised crime had taken hold, and with it came a wave of gangland violence that would leave a lasting impact on Irish society. Joseph Delaney, a known associate of a major criminal outfit operating out of West Dublin, found himself at the centre of one such case. On a quiet residential street in 1996, Delaney carried out a brutal murder, one that prosecutors argued was a clear example of gangland enforcement. The victim, Eamon Kelly, had been involved in criminal activities and had allegedly fallen foul of the group Delaney worked for. It was a targeted killing, coldly calculated, and intended to send a message to others within the criminal underworld. But what set this case apart wasn't just the murder itself. It was how the justice system responded. The Irish state, under growing public pressure and facing international scrutiny, had begun to take a more aggressive stance on organised crime. New legislation was introduced that allowed for tougher sentencing, enhanced surveillance powers, and a clearer legal framework to define and prosecute gangland activity. The Gardaí were increasingly supported by specialist units like the Criminal Assets Bureau, which had been formed just 2 years earlier in response to the murder of journalist Veronica Guerin. When Joseph Delaney stood trial, the prosecution emphasized not just the act of murder, but the context in which it occurred. They painted a picture of a man acting on orders, embedded within a larger criminal structure, and enforcing discipline through terror. The jury agreed. On April 2nd, 1999, he was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. In doing so, he became the first person in Ireland to be convicted of murder under the gangland classification, a legal and symbolic milestone. The significance of this conviction extended well beyond the courtroom. It sent a clear message that the state would no longer treat gang-related killings as ordinary crimes. It was a recognition that Ireland was facing a new kind of threat, one that required a coordinated, long-term response. In the years that followed, the government continued to strengthen its hand. The establishment of the Special Criminal Court to try gangland cases without a jury, the continued funding of crime prevention units, and new laws targeting criminal assets all reflected this shift. Yet despite these efforts, gangland violence continued to claim lives into the 2000s and beyond, most infamously in the brutal Hutch-Kinahan feud that erupted in the 2010s. But the Delaney case remains a watershed moment. It marked the moment Ireland fully acknowledged the scale and structure of organised crime within its borders, and took its first real steps toward tackling it with a combination of legal innovation and law enforcement strategy. For the families affected by gangland violence, justice is often slow and incomplete. But April 2nd, 1999 stands as a day when the Irish justice system made a decisive stand. Joseph Delaney's conviction did not end gangland crime, but it altered the way Ireland approached the battle against it. And that legacy continues to shape the nation's response to organised crime today. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Ireland's rich past. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Raymond Welsh. Slán go foil.